brush border epithelium. Lined means in like towards the inner side, the simple cuboidal brush border. Brush border means like cube-like cells are there and they have cilia on top of it present. So they are brush bordered epithelium, and this increases the surface area for absorption so that more and more absorption can take place from this tubule. Now, all of the essential nutrients that are there and 70 to 80% of electrolytes and water, it will get reabsorbed by this segment called as PCT. It helps to maintain the pH and the ionic balance of the body fluid by selective secretion. So other than reabsorption, what else does it do? Selective secretion of hydrogen ions and ammonia into the filtrate and by absorption of bicarbonate ion. So it reabsorbs the water, minerals, then all the important nutrients. Other than that, it selectively secretes hydrogen ions and ammonia, and it absorbs the bicarbonate ion from the filtrate. So this is the function of the PCT. Then there is the Henle's loop or loop of Henle. In this particular duct, the reabsorption is minimum in its ascending limb. Okay, in the ascending limb, the reabsorption is minimum. However, this region plays a significant role in maintenance of high osmolarity of the medullary interstitial fluid, meaning it maintains the ionic and the cationic balance of the medullary interstitial fluid. Now, the descending limb of Henle, this is permeable to water, meaning it allows the water, but it is impermeable to the electrolytes. So this concentrates the filtrate as it moves down. Now the ascending limb, it is impermeable to water, but allows the transport of electrolytes actively or passively. So it will let the electrolytes move up and down. So the concentration of the urine, it happens in the Henle's loop. So it gets diluted due to the passage of electrolytes to the medullary fluid. This is the part or this is the portion that takes place in the Henle's loop. Then there is the distal convoluted tubule, that is the DCT. Here what will happen? Conditional reabsorption of sodium and waters like sodium ion and water will take place. Conditional. When it will be needed, then it will be reabsorbed. If not needed, then it will not be reabsorbed. Now the distal convoluted tubule, this is also capable of reabsorption of the bicarbonate ion, the selective secretion, meaning it will secrete the hydrogen and the potassium ion and the ammonia into the filtrate so that the pH is maintained and so that the sodium-potassium balance is maintained in the blood. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So these are all the different tubules and what they do. Now see here. This picture tells us like the upper arrow shows that it is being absorbed. It's being taken away from the filtrate. The lower one will show that it is being selectively secreted. Okay. This one. So here the hydrogen ion and the ammonia, this is selectively secreted inside. Okay, whereas all of these like the bicarbonate, the sodium chloride, the nutrients, all of these things are reabsorbed. So this is what happens. Remember that maximum reabsorption takes place from PCT. Then the descending limb of Henle, here water is taken away, but NaCl, that is the salt, is selectively secreted. Now, lastly, talking about the collecting duct. So here, this duct extends from the cortex of the kidney to the inner part of the medulla. So here, large amounts of water could be reabsorbed. Okay. So greater amount of water is reabsorbed from this region to produce a concentrated urine, because we want to prevent the loss of excessive water from our body. So we don't want that to happen. That is why we produce a very concentrated urine. Now this segment allows passage of the small amounts of urea into the medullary interstitium so that the osmolarity is kept alive. It plays a role in the maintenance of pH and ionic balance of blood by selective secretion of hydrogen ions, potassium ions, like it is selectively secreted. Clear? See what the ducts do. Each of the ducts, it's very important to remember, because this can be asked like what is the function of PCT? What is the function of DCT in terms of the filtrate formation and all of that. So you should know and you should remember all of these things. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Now let's talk about how the concentration of the filtrate is done. Concentration means like the absorption of as much as water that is available. Now mammals, they have an ability to produce a very concentrated urine. So the Henle's loop and vasa recta. Vasa recta was the red network-like structure that was present parallel to the loop of Henle. So here, to produce a concentrated urine, first of all, what is the requirement? Henle's loop. Second, the vasa recta. Now the flow of filtrate in the two limbs of Henle's loop is in opposite direction. The filtrate flow, like for example, it is moving like this here. So in the vasa recta, it will move like this. So it's in the opposite direction. And since it is in the opposite direction, it forms a counter current that is opposite to each other. So the flow of blood through the two limbs of vasa recta is also in a counter current pattern. The proximity between the Henle's loop and vasa recta, as well as the counter current in them, it helps in maintaining and increasing the osmolarity. Maintaining the osmolarity is very important because here the ionic, the cationic balance has to be made. So from 300 milliosmoles in the cortex, it is maintained to about 1200 milliosmoles in the inner medulla. And this is maintained because of salt and urea. Now, NaCl is transported by the ascending limb of Henle's loop, and this is exchanged with the descending limb of vasa recta, because here the flow is exactly opposite in nature. Later on, this sodium chloride, which is the salt, it is returned to the medullary interstitium by the portion of vasa recta. Now, small amounts of urea enter the thin segment of ascending limb, and then it is sent to the collecting tubule. So if anyone would ask you what is the mechanism because of which the concentrated urine is produced, so your answer would be counter current mechanism. It is the mechanism because of which the concentrated urine is produced. Now, presence of such interstitial gradient helps in the easy passage of water from the collecting tubule, thereby concentrating the filtrate. Human kidneys can produce urine that is nearly 4 times concentrated than the initial filtrate. So maximum reabsorption, like 98% reabsorption takes place. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, after that, there is the regulation of the kidney function. Now, how is it done? And why is it done? The question is there. Now, see, in this, the hypothalamus, the juxtaglomerular apparatus, and the heart. These three things are involved in the regulation of this kidney function. Now, in our body, there are so many different kinds of receptors like sight receptors, hearing receptor, taste receptor. Same way, the osmoreceptors are also present. Osmoreceptors are the one that can quickly understand the changes in the blood volume, whether the ions are decreased or whether the ions are increased. So that can be easily detected by them. And that is why it's very important that the particular, this thing, the receptors, they help in maintaining the osmotic balance of our body. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Hmm. All right. Now moving forward, what happens? The osmoregulators, they get activated if there is any change in the blood volume or any change in the body fluid or the ionic concentration. If excessive loss of fluid takes place, then these receptors, the osmoreceptors will get activated. Then what will happen? The osmoreceptors will send a signal, and this signal will stimulate the hypothalamus, our endocrine gland, to release the hormone called as ADH or the vasopressin. Do you remember where is this hormone stored?
It hurt.
No,
Hypothalamus.
it is synthesized by the hypothalamus, but it is stored somewhere else. Where? Which hormone is called, or sorry, which gland is called as the master gland?
Pituitary gland.
Pituitary. So, in the posterior pituitary, this hormone is stored and it gets released from there only. Okay.
Okay.
Hmm. Now, what is the function of this hormone? This hormone, it facilitates the water reabsorption from the later parts of the tubules, and it prevents diuresis, meaning excessive loss of water from the body. So this is what happens when the blood volume is decreased or the fluid is excessively lost from the body. Now, an increase in the blood fluid volume, it can switch off the osmoreceptors and it can suppress the ADH release, so that now the ADH will be sent back. It's not it's not needed anymore. ADH can also affect the kidney function by its constrictory effects on the blood vessel. Meaning the ADH, it increases the blood vessel because it constricts them. Sort of like imagine them contracting. An increase in the blood pressure can increase the glomerular blood flow and thereby the glomerular filtration. So that can be increased and more water can be absorbed. Now, the juxtaglomerular apparatus, it plays a complex regulatory role. Whenever the GFR falls or the glomerular blood pressure falls, so this can activate the juxtaglomerular cells to release renin. Now, this renin, it is responsible for converting the angiotensinogen present in our blood to angiotensin 1 and then to angiotensin 2. Now, angiotensin 2, it's like a mechanism, like one after the other. Now, angiotensin 2, it is a powerful vasoconstrictor. Again, it increases the blood pressure and thereby increases the GFR. So, this will be released only when the GFR has been decreased. It will be released to increase the GFR. Apart from that, the angiotensin 2, it also activates the adrenal cortex so that it would release aldosterone. Now, aldosterone, this is the hormone that can reabsorb the sodium ions and water from the distal parts of the tubule, thereby increases the blood pressure and the GFR. This whole entire mechanism, right from the JG cells, the aldosterone, every single thing, we call it as the renin-angiotensin mechanism. Clear?
Yes,
Any
ma'am.
doubts up until now?
No, ma'am.
Are you sure?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, an increase in the blood flow to the atria of the heart can cause the release of the ANF, that is atrial natriuretic factor. Now, when the blood flow is increased a lot, that is also bad because it has to be in a proper number or proper, you can say, manner. So, this ANF hormone, it is released by the walls of our heart, the atria, and it causes vasodilation. It dilates the blood vessel. So, for example, if this is the blood vessel tightly constricted, it makes them relax and thicker like this. So now the blood pressure will fall down and then the GFR will also fall down. So this is like whenever the blood pressure is increased. So this mechanism is done so as to decrease it. Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay. After that, we have micturition. Now, urine that is formed by the nephrons, it's ultimately carried to the urinary bladder. So, the urine formed is stored inside the urinary bladder until a voluntary signal is sent by the CNS so as to release it. Now, this signal is initiated by the stretching of the urinary bladder as it gets filled with the urine. So the stretch receptors, they send the signal to the brain, meaning the CNS, and then the CNS allows our body to relax, or you can say it causes the contraction of the smooth muscles of the bladder and the relaxation of the urethral sphincter and thereby release of the urine out of the body. So this process is called as micturition, like the process of release of urine is called as micturition. And this whole entire thing where is the receptor took to the CNS calls this action. This is called as the neural, like it's a neural response, and we call it as the micturition reflex. Now, an adult human excretes 1 to 1.5 liters of urine per day. The urine that is formed is light yellow colored, watery fluid, and it is slightly acidic. That is, the pH is 6. And it has a characteristic odor. Now, in this, 25 to 30 grams of urea is excreted out per day. But again, the amount of urine produced can be affected by a lot of characteristics or a lot of conditions. Analysis of urine helps in clinical diagnosis of many metabolic disorders like the glycosuria, when there is the presence of glucose in the urine, ketonuria, ketone bodies. So this is like indicates the diabetes condition. Then the urine contains sugar in it. Sugar meaning glucose. So we can tell if the kidneys are functioning well or if not by the usage of this. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now talking about how do other organs, like other than kidneys and stuff, how do they produce or help in the process of excretion? So other than the kidneys, there are lungs, liver, and the skin. They also help in elimination of the excretory waste from our body. Our lungs, they remove large amount of carbon dioxide and a lot, like significant quantities of water every day. The liver, which is the largest gland, it secretes bile-containing substances like bilirubin, biliverdin, cholesterol, steroid hormones, vitamins, and drugs. So they also pass out along with the digestive waste. So this is how also the waste is removed from the body. Then the sweat and the sebaceous gland in the skin, they can eliminate certain substances through the secretions. The sweat is produced by the sweat gland, and it's a watery fluid that contains sodium chloride, small amounts of urea, lactic acid, all of these things. Now, so why do we sweat? We sweat so that our body can cool down. Apart from that, it also removes these urea and lactic acid from our body. The sebaceous gland, now these are the oil glands of our body. So they eliminate certain substances like sterols, hydrocarbons, waxes through the sebum that is produced. It also provides the protective oily covering for the skin. So the oil glands are sebaceous gland. Lastly, coming on to the last topic of this chapter, that is disorders of the excretory system. Now, malfunctioning of kidneys can lead to accumulation of urea in the blood. This process or this condition wherein the urea gets accumulated in the blood, it is called as uremia. And obviously, it will be very harmful and it can cause kidney failure. So in people that have kidney failure, they have to undergo a process called as hemodialysis, wherein the urea is removed from their blood by hooking them to a machine. Also, during the process of hemodialysis, the blood is drained from a convenient artery. It's pumped into a dialyzing unit called as artificial kidney. The blood drained from a convenient artery is pumped into a dialyzing unit after adding anticoagulant like heparin. Now, in the dialyzing unit, there is this apparatus wherein what would happen? It will contain everything except for nitrogenous waste. So, by diffusion, the nitrogenous waste from our blood will move into the hemodialyzer. As nitrogenous waste are absent in the dialyzing fluid, these substances move out, clearing the blood. The cleared blood now is pumped back inside our body by a vein after adding anti-heparin to it. Heparin means something that will not allow the blood to coagulate. And this method, it's a temporary method, but this helps a lot. Now, the kidney transplantation, it is the ultimate method wherein renal failure, that is kidney failure, can be corrected. Organ transplant. So, a functioning kidney is transplanted surgically from a donor into the person that has undergone kidney failure. Because of this, now a person has a kidney to live. Then there is renal calculi. Renal calculi, these are the stone or insoluble mass of crystallized salts like oxalates within the kidney. And it's very painful and it has to be removed. Then there is glomerulonephritis. Here, inflammation of glomeruli takes place. So all of these are the disorders of the excretory system. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So with this particular chapter has been done. Now tell me, is there any other chapter that is left or all of the chapters have been completed?
All the chapters are completed, right?
Yeah, that is what I'm asking. All the chapters are done, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, now tell me if you have any doubts, anything you want to ask?
No, but
Nothing.
no.
All right. So what do you want to do now? Okay, now you can take down some notes. I'll share some notes on the screen. For now, you can use these notes. Like you can take down the important line from these notes. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can now take down the notes.